2025 was not the most stellar year for markets nor the local economy, but we end the year with a dose of good news that's coming from the semiconductor space. And here to bear that, we have with us Dan Lachica, president of the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines, Foundation Incorporated. Dan, so good to see you, and I leave it to you to tell us the good news for the year. Please, go ahead.
Well, first of all, good morning, Danny, and your viewers. Happy New Year. Yes, we closed the year with some good news. We started the year with a projection of flat growth, given the global challenges, the geopolitical situation, and of course, the U.S. tariff. And we've been conservative through the whole year, but it looks like it would be safe to say that we're going to close the year with double-digit growth, far exceeding our expectations. From 2024 numbers of $42.6 billion, we expect to reach anywhere between $48 to $49 billion to close the year.
That's incredible. So that represents, if I'm not mistaken, 23% growth. And that comes from your initial estimate, Dan, of 5 to 7%. Why the major surprise? Tell us what were the positive catalysts.
Well, actually, it's right now we're tracking about 14% according to the PSA report. And so maybe 14 to 15%, which really, like you said, surpasses our growth. We were conservative, but then again, strong demand in the commercial industrial products, automotive, and of course, semiconductors, which everybody and everything uses for the devices today, spurred that growth.
Okay. You mentioned that you did not expect this, or at least you were conservative. Was this a one-off situation this year, or does this surge have legs, especially as we go into the new year?
Well, going into the first semester, our expectations were tempered because obviously, while we were promoting Create More, we got hit with the news of the U.S. Tariffs, and so the continuing geopolitical upheaval around the world also tempered that expectations. But then again, we were seeing some movement from July, the second semester onward. But then again, the volatility of the U.S. tariffs kind of kept us from announcing some positive growth. As you know, we didn't want to set false expectations. We'd rather perform rather than give false news and like I said, set false expectations. We'd rather over deliver rather than underperform.
But can you give an indication of whether we will, now that this is clearer, will we be seeing the same double-digit growth at least for next year? What are your new projections for 2026?
Well, it's not really that clear. Part of the upside, if you will, would be the 0% tariff on semiconductors. I'm referring to the U.S. tariff, right?
Okay.
While you mentioned earlier, the country is seeing a 19% reciprocal tariff. Semiconductors and some selected EMS products are still enjoying that 0%, owing to the Section 232 of the U.S. Trade Expansion Act. But as everybody might know, or maybe didn't know, the U.S. is still reviewing that policy, and at any given time, that may change. And so that's what's tempering our expectations and the forecast. For 2026, we have forecasted conservative 5% growth over what we export in 2025, which, like I said, may land between $48 and $49 billion. Still, the country's top commodity exports numbering about 59 to 60% of our exports.
Can you clarify the 0% tariff? Do you mean that for semiconductors, we're not being slapped the 19% tariff that the rest of our products or exports have? And do you think that the U.S. government has incentive to keep this 0% tariff, or really there's no clarity on that?
There's still no clarity. And by the way, we're not the only country that enjoys that 0% tariff for semiconductors and some selected electronics products. And the reason for that is that with this, as I mentioned, Section 232 of the U.S. Trade Expansion Act basically describes products that are integral or important to U.S. security and commercial interests.
Great.
That being said, obviously, semiconductors coming out of the Philippines plays a major role, and that's why for now we have that 0% tariff that we're utilizing and, of course, taking advantage of.
For the peso, did that play a role this year? And how are you seeing that evolve next year?
Well, ironically, sad to say, it's actually good or bad depending on how you look at it. Um, the with the depreciation of the peso, that's actually favorable to exporters, right? Because we are dollar denominated industry, so especially when we buy local parts and although that's about 60% of our raw materials are a mix of local and imported, mostly imported. That's about $30 billion, and so we have a parts localization program. But again, as far as local expenses, utilities, power costs, which is still expensive, we pay in pesos. So it's about I would say about 0.3 or 0.4% benefit for our industry if with the lower peso.
Mm-hmm. Can we shift from the U.S. to the local industry and expanding that here in the Philippines? I mean, we've been talking about this for many years. You were pushing back on higher taxation, on loss of incentives. What is the government doing now to support the sector? Have you at least resolved some of those issues?
Well, we're optimistic and looking forward to the impact of Create More, especially with the renewed confidence in PESA, which is our main, I guess, partner in government, and DTI, of course. But then again, with all these things that are going on, the corruption and all the distractions, and of course, ARTA also is helping a lot in terms of the ease of doing business. But this corruption issue with the ghost projects that's also hampered the confidence in the country. I'm optimistic that the new BIR commissioner, Attorney Charlie, would hopefully be able to do a lot in terms of reducing, if not eliminating, corruption altogether. But all this distraction still, kind of hamper the growth of our industry. The other thing that we need to do is go up the value chain. And in semiconductors, if you look at the semiconductor supply chain, we have a big gap in that supply chain for the Philippines. Of course, we're strong in assembly, test, and packaging. However, while we are promoting the growth of the IC design industry, there's a big gap between IC design and back-end assembly, test, and packaging, and that is the wafer fabrication part of it. Of course, we can't go from nothing to commercial wafer fab. So we have suggested that we have actually submitted to DOST a proposal for a lab scale wafer fab to get us started, train the talent, and of course develop the capability, show a proof of concept so that eventually we can attract investors in a commercial wafer fab, which is admittedly quite prohibitive, quite expensive. And at this point, we have to show that we have the ecosystem and the capability to support that.
Dan, can you nuance a little bit? I'm sure you are on a day-to-day basis talking with these foreign investors. You're very outward-looking about this whole corruption issue. What is being asked about here for them to feel more confidence in investing? What is your ask to the government? Yeah.
The extent of our conversations with investors would be what our members deal with in terms of customers and future investors. The heavy work has to be done by government, showing that we're serious about the pursuit of this violators, of these corrupt officials. And yes, we are seeing a lot of activities, but then again, where are the convictions? And I'm not talking about the small fry, right? The small fries. I'm talking about the significant corrupt officials who availed of these ghost projects and raked in a lot of money. And so I think that's what investors are looking for. We have received concerns, feedback from our from our members that, that's the question that's asked them. What is the Philippines going to do, or specifically, what are you as a company, especially the multinationals, doing about this corruption issue? And all we can do really is, from our end, we work on the things that we can control, improving efficiency, improving delivery. But then again, we really need to look at government to make sure that there is a definitive uh, actions on this allegations and issues of corruption.
Before we let you go, Dan, no, we are set to chair the ASEAN in 2026, and we have the DTI's Christina Roca mentioning that as part of the strategy, there's going to be this matching, business matching initiative, and she actually singled out semiconductor industry. What's going to be your participation there, and how do you hope to leverage on the ASEAN leadership this year?
Well, initially I was kind of concerned because when I looked at the original agenda or program for ASEAN, there was no mention of semiconductors. And that's a major concern. Like I said, we account for nearly 60% of the country's exports, and not to include semiconductors in the agenda would be a big mistake. And I'm not just talking about mentioning semiconductors because initially, the next revision I saw was what we call this prioritized economic drivers. The government has a list of about 10 or so, or 16, I believe. And I did see semiconductors, but it was stated as attract investors in semiconductors. Well, my concern is how can we attract investments if we don't improve the investment environment, if we don't have value propositions for the semiconductor industry. So we're talking to the ABAC, of course, Chairman Joey Concepcion, and also reaching out to DTI and again, DOST, to hopefully make that as a specific part of the program. I was in Malaysia, I guess 2 months ago, and as you know, they chaired 2025, and there was this ASEAN Semiconductor Initiative. They called it ASEMIS. And I was impressed with what they did. There was a whole program, there was a whole slew of initiatives, and there was visible support from the Prime Minister. But I haven't quite seen the program for that, so I'm reaching out to government, requesting government. By the way, this countries, we signed an MOU with 4 other countries in ASEAN, and they're basically saying, SAPI, why don't you chair the ASEAN initiative for semiconductors? We call it ASEMIS, and do it in the Philippines when you chair it. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't really firmed up, what we're going to do about it, other than what, again, SAPI controls. And that is when we do our PSECE October 26 to 28, we're going to put an ASEAN flavor there. In other words, we're going to be inviting our 4 ASEAN association partners from Malaysia, from Thailand, from Vietnam and Singapore. And we're just going to do our best to ensure that the semiconductors is promoted in our ASEAN community. So October 26 to 28, the 26, hopefully the president and the cabinet members can join us. And maybe we'll invite you too, Danny, to help us.
Please do. Promote that. Absolutely. We will be there to cover that. Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you so much for spending the last day of 2025 with some good news with us. Dan Lachica, President of the Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines Foundation Incorporated.